He misses. But they don't miss out. Their day, their year, their joy.
Welcome to the footy round of the Protected Zone. And this program is presented to you by Eddie J and Linton Anand. How are you, Eddie?
I'm very well. How about you?
Oh, all right. I can't complain. The cherries are blooming and, people are getting crazy and it's getting warm in Japan all of a sudden.
So you're still in Japan?
Yes, I am still stuck in Japan in the middle of, Japan Alps and, the mountains look gorgeous with the snow on top and, the temperature gets down to today they're forecasting like below 10, but which is just, big improvement from last week, where we had, temperature below minus and stuff.
Well, that sounds like Melbourne weather.
So it's getting into the footy weather.
Well, it certainly is. Well, as you know, we had round 2 last weekend. And what sort of things did you pick up from round 2?
Well, round 2 was very interesting. I just, how thuggy the Melbourne team got into, and they got the really bad haircuts. Well, you can't name names of, players with bad haircuts, but... they looked like a very thuggy.
Well, even if we're not going to name names, and I agree with you, we should keep this sort of thing confidential. We don't want people to become too litigious and for us to get into any sort of trouble, but we can talk about teams rather than individuals. So which team specifically had the haircut issue?
I think, the teams haircuts sort of representing the mood, the intention, the sort of willingness. I mean, traditionally, the rougher they look, they show the sort of rough side. Okay, we're a physical team and we'll intimidate you, that kind of thing. And while teams like Collingwood, they have a few very well-preserved, sort of nice-looking young fellows.
Now, you hung up your boots a long, long time ago, and so did I. But if you were playing today, which team would you be most threatened by? As far, not so much their physical aspects or whether they're muscly or tall or whatever, but just on their looks, like the sort of hair, the tattoos.
The haircut. I feel very intimidated by the look of Melbourne, and I don't mind the Adelaide. It didn't seem to be too intimidating, but Melbourne certainly looked very sort of rough, and just I want to keep away from them.
Now, a lot of these issues are above the shoulders, as they do like to say in football. It's a psychological factor. Do you think that played a part in Melbourne's victory over Carlton on the weekend?
Yeah, that was, fairly close up to final change. And, I was impressed by the way Melbourne came back. But as a result, they lost 2 quality players for rough conduct. But they were certainly physical, weren't they?
They were. It was a very tight match, as you did say, but they ran away with it in the final quarter. But I tend to agree with you there. If I was playing today and playing against Melbourne, I'd feel quite threatened, and I'd even say that it might be a 2 or 3 goal advantage.
The look speaks louder even before you play, and that's why I think in a different code, the teams from New Zealand, for example, they try to intimidate other teams even before the ball bounces or whatever. And that's really intimidating, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is. They do the haka, the All Blacks rugby union team, and I believe the rugby league does a version of it as well. There possibly should be something like that in the AFL as well. I'm not exactly sure what it could be, but some sort of intimidation, some sort of process to start off the game, to let people know that this is where you stand, this is what's going to happen. And sure, you can have the beards and the aggressive look and the tattoos and things like that, but there probably needs to be some sort of intimidatory dance, not just any old sort of hip-hop dance, but an intimidatory dance to start off the game.
I do agree, and it works, certainly works for the New Zealanders. I mean, black All Blacks, really all conquering and beating Australia apparently right, left and centre.
Now, round two, that constitutes roughly 11% of the season so far. So what we've talked about the styles of some of the teams. Melbourne looked very, very aggressive with their hairstyles and appearance. What other themes have you picked up from round two? Well, not so much round two, but the season so far, given that it's 11% complete.
Yeah, it is scary, isn't it? We have finished 2 rounds and for some teams, it's all over. Look at the selection by Freo. All panic. You picked the Freo as a smoky.
Yes, I did.
They dropped like 6 players this weekend.
Well, as they say, they've wielded the axe. I think it's more than the axe. I think they've taken the machine gun out. 6 players. That's a lot in one game.
Yeah, that's like a quarter of a team, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Now, as you do realise, this program is we're developing a good following, and one of the comments that we had was, "What is a smoky?" Now, we've talked about the smoky in our first episode and in the second episode as well, and here we are again talking about it. What actually is a smoky? What does it actually mean? What is it talking about? Is it a team that is unpredictable, or is it a team that is not expected to do anything and they were at the bottom of the ladder and then in a particular season, and then the following season they rise to the finals or get into the top 4? What's the true definition of a smoky or a bolter?
Bolter, I'm not sure about Bolter, but the smoky, as far as I'm concerned, they're sort of underrated and, off the radar kind of thing. And, for example, team like Essendon this year, no one expects them to do anything. But they're actually playing a good footy, and that's the reason I chose Essendon as a smoky. I mean, they have a potential to be successful, but too unpredictable. Like last year, when Doggies won the premiership from number 7, was it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so no one expected them to do anything, but they did something, and they ended up winning the flag. So that's a good story.
This world is not meant for you. Run, boy, run. They're trying to catch you. Run, boy, run. Running is a victory. Run, boy, run. Beauty lies behind the hills. Run, boy, run. The sun will be guiding you.
Now, speaking of good stories, we had quite a few extremes within round 2. We had one match that was decided by a solitary point, and then at the other end we had another game that was decided by 102 points. What's an acceptable loss? Is it better to lose a match by 1 point or 102 points?
I think the game between North and Geelong, I think North Melbourne either ran out of puff or, decided, oh yes, it's already won, and went home without realizing it's only a 3/4 time. And one of the Scott brothers did something wrong. I don't know which one it is. They look pretty much the same, don't they?
Well, they are identical twins after all. But the good thing about whenever the Scott brothers coach each other is that the family wins out.
Yeah, their mothers and their parents will be proud that they can't lose. I mean, they can lose, but they at least have one winner.
Yes, they do. So it's not really a win-win situation. It's a win-loss situation. But at least someone in the family wins. That's good to hear.
Do you think their parents can tell the difference?
They probably can. I can't tell the difference.
No, I couldn't tell the difference when the TV shows the, one of the Scott brothers, and I thought, oh, which one is it? Which one is it? I couldn't tell. They have an identical hairdo too.
They do. And I'm sure that if you were unfamiliar with the game of football and you were watching the broadcast, you'd be wondering what's going on with all the TV shots going from one of the Scots over to the other Scot.
But I think the winning Scot must have rung the loser Scot on the day and commiserating. I think you did well, but you were not good enough. That kind of thing.
I'm sure they do that. They probably wait until Sunday lunch to do that sort of thing. But the match itself was quite intense. For the final 5 minutes, the scores were tied, and it was just going back and forth. Like there were more back and forth movements than you see at a pinball parlour. It was quite incredible, and just that tension of having the scores tied, going from one goal mouth to the other. Even a little trickle over the line would have won the game for either team. As it ended up, one team scored a goal. That was North Melbourne. They were a goal ahead. Then Geelong came back, kicked a point, and then they followed that up with a goal. Siren goes. That's the end of the match.
I think that was one of the better games as far as the spectacles or tension or suspense is concerned of this season. I think. So going back to your question, losing by 1 point, it hurts because you could have won. 5 seconds ago you were leading, and now at the end, when the siren rang, you're loser. So it's. You don't want to lose, but if you have to go down, by 1 point is more hurting. But in a way, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think an acceptable loss would be around 3 or 4 goals, where you've been in the match, you've had some sort of chance of winning. That's a more acceptable loss than losing by a point, especially something such as a goal kicked after the siren or something like that. But to lose 100 points, you're definitely not in the race. There's no interest for your team. There's no interest for the spectators. That's a classic loss situation, losing by 100 points where you've just had no chance. And that's exactly what happened to the Gold Coast on the weekend when they played the Greater Western Sydney.
Was anyone still watching the game at the end of the...
Well, they did have a crowd of 8,000, but I'm not sure if those people were turning up early for the Easter show, which is on at around the same time, or whether they were genuine supporters. It's a little bit hard to know because the AFL does fabricate the crowd numbers once in a while.
Oh, really?
They're very mindful of having the exact numbers coming through, but if the actual crowd was 4,000, they would hate to publish that sort of information. So they probably let quite a few people in for free, kids, people that might just be lost, trying to find their way around the place, and they just say, well, come and watch this game for free.
Right. And can you tell me, if you know, why do they announce the crowd numbers in the final quarter? Or does it really take that long to count number of people getting through the gate in this digital age? I think, immediately after the, first bounce, you can tell how many people are on the ground.
Well, I would think so, but they're possibly still a bit old school when it comes to counting the crowd, where they probably have a team of kids, pay them $20 an hour to count all the numbers coming through, and that's the reason why it takes a while to add up all the figures.
Now, another subject, a lot of people were talking about in this last week was umpires.
Oh, yes. Let's listen to this decision and let me know what you think about it.
Here's the high ball, right on the head of Bontempelli. Off hands over the back, Picken. Callum Mills. He was halfway down the goal square. Let's listen.
You weren't under immediate pressure, okay?
But he was halfway in the square. Let's have a look at this.
Okay, so
Where's the pressure?
Have a look on the angle, right on the point
Well,
by Slam.
probably
So
a
we've just
fair
listened to
call
the
on
audio
this.
of that
Being tested
decision
here.
where Callum Mills was in the goal square. He was under pressure, he punched the ball through the goals and he was penalised. Free kick to the Western Bulldogs, they got a goal out of it. The big issue for me is not so much that they made the wrong decision, but all the talk is not about how good the game was or anything like that. And it was a fantastic game between the Western Bulldogs and Sydney. But all the talk has been about poor decision making by the umpires.
Interesting point. There are sort of differences, in rules. Like in footy, there are two rules that you're penalised because of your intention, deliberately out of bounds or deliberately rushed behind. Not your actions, but your intention is questioned. Even if the action is the same, you're judged by your intention. And how could you tell if the player was actually intending to do this? They have to be a bloody good actors to disguise this. And over the years, yes, players have become very good at disguising their intention. But this is the area that I don't think any other footy codes have. Your intention is questioned. Whether it is, umpire's problem or player's problem or whatever, but it's just so hard to judge. How could you judge you're deliberately, doing this or that? How could you do that?
Well, it's also quite humiliating for the players because they're constantly being psychoanalysed by the umpires. They're being psychoanalysed, they're being assessed as to what their intentions were about a particular thing. So it makes it very difficult for the umpires, but it's also quite humiliating for the players to be psychoanalysed on that sort of level by the umpires.
I think that those two, deliberately out of this or deliberately this should go. I think it's rules too hard to judge. And, all the rules have to be what you actually do, not your intention. And then, all the grey areas will be gone.
Now, because most of the conversation over the weekend has been about umpires and not the actual football, which is what we're all here for, there's been some calls about making umpires full-time.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised to learn that they're a bunch of amateurs. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. I actually share your surprise. I was very surprised when they said that umpires are not full-time. Now, as far as a professional body is concerned, the AFL makes billions of dollars over a 5 or 6 year period. You'd think that they'd have enough money to fork out for full-time umpires.
Yes, I'm very shocked to learn that some of the umpires are, teachers and pie inspectors and, maybe a bus driver, Those people officiating the games of high quality. Yes, they should be all employed full-time and paid handsomely.
But I think it's also a case of being careful for what you wish for, because if umpires did become full-time, what would they do with their time?
Well, they can practice bouncing the balls and throwing in from the boundary, and they can sort of perfect the goal-scoring action. Now, talking about that, I would like the goal umpires to bring back their pie inspectors' coats. I just can't stand those yellow shirts or whatever, and silly hats. Remember those, white coat and nice wide-brimmed hat?
Yes, I do. I think it's probably time to bring that back as well. But maybe the goal umpires should be full-time as well. But what would umpires do with all that spare time? The reason why I bring that up is that if they have too much spare time, they're not doing their normal day jobs, they might get into other things. Like they might start doing university courses where they start studying philosophy and start studying different ways of interpreting AFL rules. Now, they're quite complicated, all the rules at the moment, and I believe that they might start overthinking all of their decisions and and start questioning their own existence. If they studied a philosophy course at university or a design and history course or something like that, they may start questioning their whole existence as an umpire, start questioning their whole decision-making process. They may make things even more complicated.
Well, it's a psychological as well as a physical, isn't it? I mean, the same thing could be said about the, footy players. Now they are full-time footy players. What do they do when they're not playing? They might train, but the same thing could be said about umpires. They run a bloody long distance during the game, don't they?
Oh, they certainly do. They probably run as much as the elite runners in each team.
So I think they could spend the time sort of doing a physical exercise and doing a bit of community work and get suspended and play in the twos and stuff like that, like the players.
So if they do become full-time, what will they do for their Mad Monday?
They can join in. I mean, they seem to be a very casually, casual to each other. They always call first names, don't they?
They do. That's changed quite a lot over the years. Previously, umpires, when they spoke to players, they'd refer to them by their number.
But now they are on the first name basis.
That's right. So initially it was players were referred to by their numbers and then they were referred to by their second names. And yeah, it's all a bit too palsy as far as I'm concerned, referring to the first names.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out sometimes, who are they talking to, There are too many Jordans these days. And Jordan, move away, that kind of thing.
Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. So won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs. Redemption
Now, the other
songs.
big decision that was made this week was that the 2017 AFL Grand Final will be played during the day.
What's wrong with that?
Well, it sounds very uncontroversial when I say it in that way, but there's been speculation about the Grand Final being moved to the Twilight Zone or to a night Grand Final.
Oh, really? Why is that?
The AFL believes that there'd be more exposure to the game. I think it's the broadcasters that want to increase the exposure to the game itself. It's something that the Rugby League Grand Final has been doing for some time. They play their Grand Final in the evening. And what's your opinion about a night Grand Final? Will it change the event as a spectacle?
I think it's against the tradition. We should stick to the last Saturday of September, 2:00. We'll be there year after year. That's the tradition. You can't change that. It's like changing the date for the Queen's birthday or something. It's just you can't do that.
Well, the first night game ever in the AFL was in 1979, and there was quite a bit of resistance to having a game played at night time. It was actually North Melbourne versus Collingwood back in 1979. They said this won't work, people won't like it. But something like 60% of games at the moment in the AFL are played at night time.
Yeah, I don't like the Thursday night games, especially. I mean, Friday night games, all right, but Thursday night games, it's a strange feeling. By the time the game is over, your weekend, if your team is playing on Thursday night, even before the weekend starting, your weekend's over. It's a very strange feeling, and I don't like that. Friday and Saturday, maybe it's okay. I've got a bit of time difference, so I can, cope with that. But Thursday night game is just not on. It ruins your whole weekend if your team plays on Thursday and lose it.
So I take it that you're not a fan of Thursday night matches and you're not a fan of the nighttime grand final.
Nah, nighttime is for, doing something else, better things to do. Maybe I'm a bit traditionalist, but...
Well, I understand what you're saying, because where would it all end? Like if they move from 2:30 start for the grand final, then to 5:30 one year, and then the next year it would be 7:30, then maybe the year after would be 9:30 or something like that. And before you know it, we'd have a midnight grand final, so or a dawn grand final. Like where would it all end?
No, you're talking about interesting prospect. Maybe we can have a footy match on Anzac Day to go with dawn service.
So playing it at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, why not? It sounds good, doesn't it?
Watch me do my thing, get lost into my singing. Heart like New Orleans and Cosby crew and jeans, yeah. Another waking, sterile on vacant, living in conditions of the motor matrix. Only paying pounds on a proper naked.
So over the past 3 weeks, we've been looking at unusual songs that some of the AFL teams have got. Initially looked at the song by the Greater Western Sydney, and then we looked at Port Adelaide. Are there any other unusual songs that are out there from any of the AFL teams?
I wouldn't call it unusual, but I don't like the West Coast Eagles song. The reason being, it's just one-liner. We're Big Bird, we're flying high, we're flying high, we're flying high. What are they on? Do you know?
Well, I think we do know what they were on. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. But what could be done to improve the West Coast Eagles song? Should they have a second verse, or...?
You can at least have a few more words. I mean, you don't expect players to be a good singers or good whatever. But still, you need a few more words so that you can sing something more than we're flying high, we're big birds, we're flying high. I mean, yeah, it's sort of challenging, isn't it?
Well, let's give it a listen and see what we think. Yeah, I can see what you're saying about that. It's a funny sort of song. It was written in the mid-1980s. The West Coast Eagles came into existence in 1987. It's a sign of the times. It's a very 1980s type of song. Whenever I hear the song, I think of mullets, and there's something not quite right about it. It's outdated. It's been around for 30 years. It's the 30 years of the existence of the West Coast Eagles song. We'll give them a new song as well, and we'll announce what that song will be at the end of the program.
Yeah, I mean, teams like the West Coast, which is a great footy team, a footy club, they deserve better. And, compared to the songs of most of the foundation clubs, which, the songs lasted and like 100 years. I mean, imagine 70 years from now, does anyone like to sing that we are flying high, we're flying high, we're flying high? No.
So there's a big round coming up in round 3, and the round starts off with What is the grand final rematch from 1936? It's the Sydney Swans versus Collingwood on Friday night, played at the SCG.
I disagree. Sydney Swans didn't exist in 1930, whatever.
1936. Well, they did exist as the South Melbourne Swans. They were actually known as the South Melbourne Bloods at that time.
Yeah, blood and bandages.
But they did contest the 1936 Grand Final as well as the 1935 Grand Finals. So since we're in the spirit of Grand Final rematches and replays and that sort of thing, here's another one on the opening night of Round 3, a Grand Final rematch from 1936.
It's a long way from 1936 with both teams still winless this year. Now, what's wrong with the Swans?
Well, I think they have been playing reasonably well. They were caught out in round 1. They played very well in the first half of round 1, but then took it too lightly. I think last weekend's match against the Western Bulldogs, they did play very well, but the Western Bulldogs were obviously much better than them. They did have a few odd decisions go against them, but that's the nature of football. It all evens out over the year. I wouldn't be too worried about the Swans.
Yeah, I was looking at the Swans selection, and I may be ignorant. A few players I have never heard of, and who are these players? And yeah, excuse my ignorance, but they seem to be going through sort of rebuilding mode without telling anyone. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's a case of the Bloods blooding some new players.
Can they afford it?
Well, that is a question that will be answered on Friday night. And they do seem to have a lot of unknown players. Obviously, we know about Buddy Franklin. He's the number one player, not just in the AFL, but in probably any sport in Australia.
Yes, he's playing his 250th.
Yes, 250th game, so he's come a long way.
Yeah, but no, I'm familiar names. And I mean, Swans have got the fairly... well-drilled and well-developed big-body midfields, Hannaberry and Jack and Kennedy. And so they will be intimidating, going back to intimidating factor, the slight-built Collingwood midfield. I think, to go straight to their point, I think Collingwood has no chance.
They must have some chance, but I agree that their chances are not that strong. But you asked me what's happening at Sydney. You mentioned that they're a bit of an unknown quantity. I think Collingwood's a little bit of an unknown quantity as well. So when you've got two unknown quantities that collide, anything can happen.
We got to choose one for tipping. Come on.
Well, I'll go for the Swans. I'd say it's at the SCG. They'll probably be too strong for Collingwood. There's a couple of strange matches on the weekend, but the most interesting one, aside from the Sydney-Collingwood game, is Richmond versus the West Coast Eagles. That's being played on Saturday at the MCG.
Traditional time.
Yes, it's the traditional time. What's going to happen there? What are the sort of things that we need to look out for?
I think West Coast will show, where Richmond Tigers are. I mean, they had very soft opponents so far. They have 2 wins. West Coast have 2 wins, and on paper anyone could win, but I think the quality of oppositions Richmond has had so far have no chance.
Well, like I said before, they have some chance. Otherwise, they just stay at home and not put their boots on. But I agree, the West Coast Eagles should win that game.
Because they're big birds and they will fly high.
Now, the other big match is probably, well, it is the match of the round. It's the two teams that are...
A showdown.
Yes, it's showdown number 425, I think it is. But it's Port Adelaide versus Adelaide, and they occupy the top two positions on the ladder. Now, it's only 2 rounds that have been completed, so the teams on top of the ladder now, it's probably not indicative of where they'll be throughout the season, but still, that's a big marketing push for the AFL, having teams 1 and 2 playing in Adelaide. The showdown, the first time that it's ever happened that they've occupied the top 2 positions on the ladder. And here they are, playing showdown 425 in Adelaide.
It's a very interesting one, and as you say, good for the footy, good for the town, and good for Adelaide, I think. Adelaide is very, very... at the moment, they're playing very good footy, very attractive, and especially their forward, Eddie Betts in particular, unstoppable. Having said that, Port still have a chance, and they're one of the other smokies, I think. But as you pointed out, it's still very early in the season, so both of them could fade out and peaking at wrong time, as they say in the trade, May premieres, that kind of thing. So, but still, it's a very interesting match. I would be looking at it very carefully. That's what counts most. But still, having said that, this game between Port Adelaide and the Adelaide Crows played on Saturday at 7:10. Is that traditional time?
No, it's not really a traditional time, and that's Adelaide time as well. So it's actually 7:40 on the eastern seaboard, or 5:40 in Perth. So who are you going for?
Hey, I'll go for Adelaide.
Now, the other games that are happening on the weekend, they don't really attract me that much. But one thing that I think we do need to look at is the state of the Fremantle Dockers. What is going on there?
I think Ross Lyon's given it up, or but he's trying. He dropped 6 players. That's a quarter of the side. That is a big call, and those players dropped include Sutcliffe, Pearce, Zach Dawson, and Nick Subban. All those players who, a few years back, they played losing grand final.
I think it's more than just their playing personnel. There's something, it might be a faction-ridden club. It just seems like something's not working on the field, possibly off the field as well.
Obviously not working. Coach to bring in 6 players, replacing a quarter of a side, is a big call. Do you think coaches like Nathan Buckley and Rodney Eade have to do for next round?
I think they should do that sort of thing. Their teams are not performing very well. It's a tactic that they should take from the Roman Empire, where it used to be called decimation, where they'd select 10% of the centurions and then remove them. They'd be axed, literally, in their case. So I think they need to take on some of those sort of attitudes. Start doing a bit of decimation, get rid of 10% of the team every week, just to keep people on their toes.
Right, so we will expect Gold Coast and Collingwood to do the same next week if they Nathan Buckley and Rodney Eade are listening to our broadcast. Just follow the lead from Ross Lyon.
Yes, I believe that's what they should do. So quite a few things are not working for Gold Coast. Quite a few things are not working for the Fremantle Dockers. quite a few things are not working for Collingwood as well.
Do we need to mention Carlton?
Carlton's it's an underperforming team at the moment, but they're out of the public spotlight at the moment because they've got a semi-new coach. This is his second year. He's got a clear rebuilding task. But someone like Ross Lyon, well, he's been in the game for a long time. So more is expected of him. Rodney Eade, he's been in there for a long time. More is expected of him. Nathan Buckley, well, how many more chances does he need to be given? He's been around for 6 seasons now. He himself said that if he doesn't get the team into the finals, he's gone. If they lose on Friday night, that means that they'll be starting off the season with 3 losses and no wins. Looks like they won't be making the finals this year if they do lose on Friday night, so he'll be gone. Well, next week there could be even bigger changes to follow. It's very hard to know, but we'll see how things pan out during the season. Now, there's a couple of other sort of big matches, but they're traditional rivals: Carlton versus Essendon. That's usually a big match at the MCG.
Right, Essendon.
And the other ones are St Kilda versus Brisbane. That's being played on Sunday.
Now, that would be an interesting one. Nick Riewoldt is miraculously coming back and playing this weekend. St Kilda.
The other match is Geelong versus Melbourne.
Yeah, that could be an interesting one. Geelong weren't very convincing, but they've got even bigger body because they're wearing sort of horizontal stripe. That would make everyone look bigger. And Melbourne losing the 2 key players of Jesse Hogan and what's his name? Jordan Lewis, another Jordan. That would be a big loss. And I think I'll go for Geelong. What do you reckon?
I tend to agree with you there. Now, there's another match which I'm not sure how many people will be watching this, but it's at Metricon Stadium up on the Gold Coast, and it's Gold Coast versus Hawthorn.
I think Hawthorn.
I'm surprised that you took so long to think about that one. We talked about Fremantle before, but they're playing against the Western Bulldogs. Is this boil over territory, or can we put that down to a victory for the Western Bulldogs?
I think the Doggies, the way they are travelling, even though they may be peaking too early, they didn't learn from last year's experience, but they are in good form.
And the final match that we need to look at is, for me, this is quite unusual. It's a team from North Melbourne playing a team from Western Sydney, playing the match in Tasmania.
Yeah. How many people do you reckon the AFL is expecting to draw? I mean, it's a big footy country, Tasmania.
Yes, it is. Well, it's not a cultural wasteland, as you discussed last week in Japan, where you suggested that most people in Japan don't understand anything about the AFL. Tasmania is the opposite of that. Everyone knows about the AFL in Tasmania.
Yes, and they have produced a lot of good quality players, and I think they deserve a team there, but they don't have a team at the moment. And who's hosting?
North Melbourne. It's a home game, North Melbourne versus Greater Western Sydney, played at Blundstone Arena, which is in Hobart.
The boot manufacturer?
Yes, that's the one.
Right. And has North Melbourne got a home? Do they have a home in North Melbourne, or they are still wandering around? And at one stage they called themselves something like kangaroos. Yeah, tried to justify their homelessness, but I'm not sure if they have a home.
Well, even their original home, Arden Street, that was demolished last year, I believe. And
so that's a home.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure whether their home is. I think it might be Etihad Stadium or the Docklands, and it's definitely not the MCG. But there's only 2 stadiums in Melbourne for AFL, so I guess it must be Docklands.
Yeah, something. They should be more sort of imaginative. I mean, what do they have in North Melbourne? They don't have headquarters. They don't have a ground.
So we've gone through all the games for round 3. There's going to be some exciting things happening. Now, previously we talked about the West Coast theme song. We're not very happy with it. It's been around for 30 years. We believe it needs to change. We'll let you know what that is in a couple of minutes, but this has been another episode of The Protected Zone. I'm Eddie J, and my friend in Japan is
Lintan Anand.
And we hope that you've enjoyed the program, and we'll speak to you next week. You certainly will. And we're going out with the new West Coast Eagles team song.
We're flying high.
This is it. Dope from the fly kid. The ice mic is back with the high bid. Suckers you lost, the players you're not. Gangsters you ain't, you faint punk if you ever heard a gunshot. Yo, the pusher, the player, the pimp, gangster, the hustler, high roller, dead press folder. It's cold lamping like a black king on a throne. Evilly, turn up the microphone so I can ill and break on the rolling tape. Another album to make, great. Islam turned the bass, kick up a bit. Hype the snare, now I got a place to sit and ride the track like a black Mac in his lack. Hit the corner slow where the girls are at and kick game the way it should be done. How you gonna drop science? You're dumb, stupid, ignorant. Don't even talk to me. In school you drop math, science, and history, and then you get on the mic and try to act smart. But let me tell you one thing, you got heart to perpetrate your bait. So just wait till the press shove a mic in your face, or you meet Boogie down at Chuck D, Stetson Sonic, or the Big Daddy, and they ask you about the game you claim you got. Drop science now, why not? You start to sweat and fret, it gets hot. How'd you get into this spot? You played yourself. Yo, you played yourself. I'm no authority, but I know the DEAL when it comes to dealing with the females. What you got, they want. Cash is what they need. Slip sucker and they'll break you with speed. But you meet a freak, you try to turn her out. Spending money's what I'm talking about. But you pull out, your pockets got blew out. And after the date, no boots, you got